Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I really wanted to talk to you guys about understanding our body's metabolism and how it can really affect your body composition, and knowing these mechanisms at work will be a key difference in your journey for sustainable weight loss, improving your muscle building efforts, and also improving your energy levels and food-life balance. So let's get into it. I do have kind of a little script here that I put together, so I am going to be looking off screen quite a bit. I just find that this actually helps me stay on topic, and my thoughts are already kind of gathered into one place. So if you keep seeing me looking off screen, it's just because I have my little outline here that I am referring to throughout the video. So, okay, let's get into it. First of all, we need to understand that metabolism is a summation of energy balance. So what I mean is that energy is constantly going in through food, and energy is also being outputted. And you have a few mechanisms that are attributing to that energy output. So expendable energy is based off of several factors like walking, exercise, small movements like fidgeting, but also when your body is digesting food, it converts it to energy. Your body needs to build cells, proteins, and tissue. All of those are processes that require energy and thus are forms of energy expenditure. So I'll get into this a little bit deeper. So all of these processes make up something called your TDEE, or your total daily energy expenditure. So this is actually a summation of all of the energy that you expel in a given day, and that is represented as calories. So like other aspects of the human body, our metabolism likes homeostasis. It doesn't like drastic changes, which means that we roughly need to eat close to the amount of energy we output. Basic example, if I am outputting about 1600 calories, I'm going to need to intake about 1600 calories. So let's get into our outputs a little bit deeper. TDEE is made up of all of the following. You have your basal metabolic rate. Your basal metabolic rate is the energy that is required to carry out your basic physiological functions. That is things like breathing, repairing cells, creating tissue, cell synthesis, digesting food, hormone exchange, all of those. This is the minimum amount of calories required daily to carry out these functions without having to move a muscle, lift a finger. This is if you literally stayed in bed and did nothing. All of these processes combined still require calories. It's actually interesting that this is your biggest source of output, so it's the biggest chunk of calories that your body requires. Your basal metabolic rate is highly dependent on your size. So how much fat tissue you have, how much muscle mass you have, how much your organs weigh, it's how much water you have, how much blood you have, etc., etc. So as you lose weight, your BMR will decrease because there's less tissue for it to keep up with, and vice versa is true. So as your weight increases, so does your BMR because your mass is increasing. There's more demand there. This is actually why building muscle mass is so beneficial to aid in long-term weight loss, is because having that muscle mass demands more energy than fat mass does, and it keeps your BMR at a high rate. But because it's also more dense, it takes up less space than fatty tissue does. So that contributes to that lean, toned look. And to be clear, leanness depends on your body fat percentage and is implying a low amount of body fat. So in this photo from 2012, you can actually see that my physique looks quite different than right now. So in 2012, I weighed about 130 pounds, which was the most I had weighed in my life up until that point. I had gained weight whenever I moved to Miami, which is where this photo was taken. And you compare that to now, I currently weigh 130 pounds, but I have seriously resistance trained for 2 years and had been resistance training beforehand, just not as like regimented. There's definitely a difference to the physique. In my old photo, you can see that I have less shape to my body and I have a little bit more softness. And compared to now, whenever I recently just finished my fat loss phase, I just have more muscle mass and less fat tissue. I look leaner, but I weigh the same. So that is why building muscle mass can be beneficial to help you look leaner, but also keep your BMR rate high. So you also have something called the thermic effect of activity, and that is the amount of energy output that is dedicated towards purposeful exercise. So anything like walking, swimming, playing tennis, and resistance training, etc., etc. This form of energy expenditure will make up the second largest chunk of your calories, but it is not nearly as much as your BMR. But this number can also influence your daily calorie requirements quite a bit, and we'll get into that a little bit later. You also have your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is movement in your day that is anything other than purposeful exercise. So that is brushing your hair, that is getting up to go to the bathroom, that's cooking, that's all like mini small fidgets. What I'm doing right now, I'm doing a lot of hand gestures. That is a part of NEAT. And then your last mechanism of energy output is your thermic effect of food. It requires energy to digest your food. You in fact burn calories through eating and digesting food. What's interesting here is that protein and fiber actually have the highest rate of TEF because their cellular structures are more complicated and they're harder for the body to break down and to digest. So they are requiring more energy for your body to break them down than carbs and fats do. So this is why boosting your protein intake and keeping it high while intentionally in a fat loss stage can keep your metabolic rate higher than it would if you were otherwise eating mainly carbs and fats. This equation represents the total amount of daily calories a body needs to reach homeostasis. If I output 1600 calories from all of these energy conversions, my body wants about 1600 calories in fuel, otherwise known as food, right? So it is important to note that your metabolism is not this set point number. It's actually a range. So it's not 1600 calories down to the T every single day. It is going to change, and that's because your metabolism is adaptable and it adapts to the short-term changes in energy input and energy output. So it's adapting to these short-term changes. But when there is consistent excess energy in, that's whenever your body is converting that excess energy into body mass, which can be distributed as muscle or it can be distributed as fatty tissue. On the opposite side, if you output more than you input, that's whenever you're going to lose mass, which could also be from muscle or from fatty tissue or from a combination of both. To be clear, weight gain and weight loss are happening because of energy balance and either creating an energy surplus or an energy deficit. And that is for over consistent periods of time. Short-term changes are not enough to vastly affect your body composition because your metabolism is adaptable. So let me give an example of this. Let's say that I had a super busy day at work where I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, right? My metabolism can compensate one of two ways. The first way is it might make me really hungry. So in order to replace that energy that I outputted, my body is telling me I need to put energy back into my body. So I might feel way hungrier than I would by 3 o'clock in the afternoon than I would on kind of a more normal day at work. So that's one mechanism coming into play. Another mechanism your metabolism might use to compensate, if it's not really making you hungrier, then maybe by the time I get home, I just kind of want to crash and become a couch potato. And even though I expelled all that energy earlier on in the day, I do not have any energy whatsoever to move. Like I don't want to walk my dog as far as I normally would. I don't really want to cook dinner. I just kind of put something in the microwave, heat it up, and I hang out on the couch the rest of the evening. Your metabolism is adapting through reducing your energy output. So both of these ways, your metabolism is trying its best to balance out your energy input and energy output. So think about it. Your physique doesn't actually change after a weekend of changing up your eating patterns. We can see this really often if we have a night out with our girlfriends, we partake in some junk food, we have a couple drinks. You might see some numbers on the scale budging, But that's mainly due to some fluid retention, maybe salt retention. The temporary increase in calories is going to hold on to more water, and you have a little bit more mass, sitting in your stomach until you pass it through. So you might see a larger number on the scale, but you're not actually fatter than you were before. You're not fatter after 2 or 3 days of indulging. On the other hand, this is also the reason that it can be really difficult to lose weight and to lose fat. If you suddenly deplete yourself of calories for a few days, again, it might cause the number on the scale to go down due to less water retention and less mass from food sitting in your stomach, but your fat doesn't magically disappear. Your metabolism is subtly working. It's balancing scales to even out temporary increases or decreases in calories or energy expenditure. It requires repetitive, consistent patterns to make long-term changes, meaning it would require weeks of eating way above your maintenance calories consistently to gain fat, and weeks of restricting your calories below your maintenance level to lose fat. Good news for us is that these balancing mechanisms also work in the reverse way. So if you provide your metabolism with more energy, aka food, it can spontaneously increase your activity levels, but also build tissue such as muscle or fat. Of course, this would be a point where we're really trying to prioritize muscle gain, and therefore you would implement forms of resistance training. So it will adapt to higher calories you're feeding it to raise your TDEE. This is really beneficial when someone is looking to improve the shape of their physique, mainly through resistance training, improve sleep, improve performance if they are into sports, aid in general recovery, and also aid in fixing kind of some of these hormonal issues that might happen if someone has been in a severe calorie restriction for long periods of time. Women can lose their periods, and that is due to changes in your hormone levels. So increasing your calories should help fix this problem. And also just plain and simple, raise your calorie intake so that you can enjoy more food without the fear of gaining weight. Of course, you cannot keep adapting your calories higher and higher until like infinity. Remember, your metabolism is based off of largely your size. So the weight of your connective tissue, your bones, water, blood, muscle are the main impactors of your weight. And what your body requires to fuel it accurately. So it's like trying to fill a glass of water and overfilling it beyond its capacity. The glass can only contain so much water before that water is starting to spill over. However, with the human body, the excess calories don't just spill over and turn into nothing. They turn into either muscle tissue or fat, and if it's too much, it's just going to be deposited as fat tissue. So if you are restricting your food intake, your metabolism might break down muscle or fat tissue to use as energy, which will aid us in fat loss goals. However, just as your metabolism will adapt to an increase in calories, it will eventually adapt to a decrease in calories, meaning you have to further reduce your calories to continue seeing progress or losing weight. Or you could also increase your activity levels more instead of purely just restricting and restricting. Of course, you can't keep creating a deficit forever. Your body wants to stay alive, and it will slow shit down for that purpose. So staying in a deficit can lead to poor sleep, poor stress management, varied hunger cues, which often are reduced sense of satiety and increase in cravings. It can lead to fatigue and can throw your hormones through a loop. This is why you shouldn't stay in a deficit for too long of a time, and also why people stop seeing weight loss and fat loss. They are at this point where they are at their lowest amount of calories that they can be, and they don't have anywhere to go from there. Their metabolism has adapted to such a low number, they can't possibly reduce it any further without serious health risk or adherence to such restriction for any long period of time to actually see change. So if you are a person who yo-yo diets, meaning you stick to a diet for several days, a few weeks, then you go back onto a normal eating behavior, and then you go back to trying some new diet again where you are restricting your intake, then your metabolism may have adapted to a pretty low number and it's just unwilling to budge any further. If you feel like you gain weight the minute you indulge or eat until satiety consistently, or you notice yourself cutting out food groups to stick to low calories, you may also fall into this situation. All right, so let me give you a real life example of how losing fat would be really difficult at this point. I'm trying to lose fat. I need to be in an energy deficit, so I need to be eating less than my TDEE. So let's say right now my TDEE is sitting somewhere around 1600, give or take. Remember, that's not one specific number. It's kind of a range depending on activity levels and hunger, etc. But we'll go with 1600 because it's simple. If I tried to create a deficit of 300 calories, that leaves me with just 1300 calories in a day to eat. And if you think about all of the food that you might consume in a day, 1300 calories is pretty darn restrictive. Little things like butters, oils, sauces, sodas, small treats are gonna add up real fast, and this amount really doesn't leave any room for much of that. So the food that I'm gonna be consuming on this diet is gonna be pretty plain, pretty repetitive. It's gonna be a lot of salads, a lot of vegetables, a lot of chicken breast, right? To be able to consistently hit that 1300 calories a day. Can I do it for a week or two? Sure, probably. But could I do it for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks? That's the question, and most likely probably not. Just because life happens, right? There are social events, vacations, stressful days that may cause extra hunger, cravings to deal with, and also just that simple desire to enjoy food. If you told me that I couldn't have a piece of chocolate for 8 weeks, you better believe that my cravings are just gonna be so intense. I'm gonna feel like the diet is just so impossible, and it's gonna make it really effing hard to stick to something like that. What's more is that my metabolism will start to adapt to the decrease in calories because, again, it wants to achieve homeostasis, right? So this could mean reducing my overall energy output. So fidgeting less, getting up and down less, not going for as long walks, or maybe just cutting out my walks entirely, causing more fatigue and less recovery in my workouts. So of course, this is where the magic happens a little bit, right? So my metabolism is looking for a fuel source to replace the food that I stopped consuming. This is why I can lose fat in the first place. But be aware your body is also going to break down muscle tissue as a fuel source. And to prevent that from happening, maintaining a high protein intake and resistance training at the same time are going to be essential to prevent that from happening. So your workouts should be stimulating enough to prevent that muscle breakdown, which will keep your metabolism at a higher set point. And again, keep my calories just a little bit higher than if I wasn't so focused on protein and I wasn't really focused on resistance training. lo and behold, 13 calories for a minimum of 8 weeks just is not that sustainable of a goal. It's gonna be pretty darn miserable. So what the fudge do we do? How can we help ourselves? What's up, you guys? I am in the middle of editing this video, and then I'm deciding that it's going to be excruciatingly long if I continue editing it and making it one video. So I've decided to break up this video into 2 halves. So we are now done with the first half, which is gonna hopefully give you a better feel for how your metabolism can positively adapt, but also negatively adapt, and how that can impede some of our weight loss goals. And then in the second video, we're gonna talk about a little bit more in detail for examples of how we would actually fix this and what we would need to do to continue seeing results. And if we wanted to enter a fat loss phase, but we don't want to enter a fat loss phase from starting out as low as 1,300 calories, then what are we gonna do? So stay tuned for that video. So I'm still gonna give the link to the ebook down in the description box below, so you guys can still download that, check that out. I'll have it in both videos. So if you're interested and you just wanna read ahead, you can already have that information. If you just wanna wait for the video, you'll have it in the next video. And then if you wanna go back ever and kind of download that just to keep that in mind and reference it for the future, then you guys will have that for free. Okay. So without further ado, let me sign off. Thank you guys for tuning into another video, and be sure to check out part 2 of this video. It is going to help you a lot. I will see you then.